back in college, one night while driving home on a long freeway that took about 2 hours, something strange happened. It was dark and quiet, with only occasional cars passing by. I noticed a truck with round headlights behind me. At first, I didn't think much of it, maybe we were both going in the same direction. As I kept driving and changed lanes a few times, I realized the truck was still behind me, keeping the same speed and distance. This went on for what felt like forever, more than 50 miles. At first, I thought it was just a coincidence, but as time went on, it made me uneasy. Why was this truck following me? Finally, after 2 hours, I reached the exit for my hometown. To my surprise, the truck also signaled and took the same exit. I started to worry. Why would someone follow me all this way, especially into my hometown? To check if the truck was really following me, I pulled into a 24-hour McDonald's drive-thru. The truck followed me into the parking lot and slowed down as if waiting. Then something unexpected happened. When the truck saw that I had pulled into the drive-thru lane, it suddenly turned around and drove away fast. I felt a mix of relief and confusion as I watched it disappear into the night. But I was still nervous. What if the truck was waiting nearby to follow me again? I drove home carefully, checking my mirrors constantly. Luckily, the truck never showed up again. Even though I got home safely, I couldn't stop thinking about why that truck had followed me for so long. To this day, I don't know the real reason. Maybe it was just a curious driver going the same way, or maybe there was something more to it. That night taught me to be more aware of my surroundings and to trust my instincts when something doesn't feel right. I was 20, I was on a drive home and it was about an 8-hour. There ended up being a traffic mishap on the way, so I got held up, but couldn't afford to book a hotel for the night. About 4 hours from home, like 11 p.m., I was on a stretch of secluded highway and there was a car behind me, but I didn't think anything of it. The same car followed me for the next hour, but I assumed that they were just going to the same place. I ended up stopping at a gas station to grab an energy drink, and the car stopped across the road but didn't get out. Again, I didn't think anything of it. When I left, the car pulled out and followed me again. I kept driving and about an hour later pulled over at a rest stop to use the bathroom. The car, still behind me, stopped at the entrance of the rest stop but didn't get out. At this point, I got super creeped out. I was like 2 hours from the next city, home, so I didn't know what to do. Just to be sure I wasn't going bonkers, I pulled over at the next pull-out. The car pulled over on a pull-out behind it, but on the other side of the road. Again, they didn't get out, but just sat there. So I kept driving and as soon as I got back into my town, I called my parents to tell them what was going on. They told me to go downtown and make 4 left turns. I did, and again, the car followed me. My parents told me to drive to the police station. The car followed me the entire way to the police station and as soon as I turned in, they peeled off like 50 kilometers per hour over the speed limit. I went in and told the cops what happened and they sent a patrol officer to find the guy, but I never heard anything about it. I have no clue what the person's motives were, but it terrified me. Now I'm super cautious anytime a car is behind me at night and takes the same turn I do. I was driving home from a friend's late one evening, probably around 3 a.m. The town I live in and grew up in has a reputation for being a racist area thanks to a few high-profile incidents and a reasonable amount of racist idiots living/having lived here in the past. As I approached the town, I was going round a roundabout when a car joins, ignoring my right-of-way and cuts me off a bit. It was a shit bit of driving, but I'm reasonably good at not letting that get to me. What was mildly irritating though was given how keen the driver was to get out onto the roundabout in front of me, he then drove about 5 miles per hour below the speed limit on the way into the town, and like I said, it's late and I just want to get to bed. About a mile later we reached the main street of the town, which has many turn-offs, and I'm still sat behind them. They pick one of the quieter turn-offs, which is the one I usually use to get home. At the end of that street they can go left or right and still end up at the other end of the housing estate. They choose right, which is where I need to go. Then they have a few turn-offs in both directions before hitting another main road. They choose the quietest turn-off, I presume thinking I'm following them and wanting to see if I actually am or if I'm just making my way into the main road. Unfortunately for them, they've turned onto my road. They're crawling along it at this point, obviously slightly worried. The driver probably thinks I'm still pissed about being cut off and I'm following him for some sort of revenge. So they decide to pull in and let me pass. They indicate and pull across a driveway which just happened to be mine. I had to pull alongside them and open my passenger side window. The driver opens his and there's 2 to 3 black teenagers in the car, all looking slightly terrified by the pretty big skinhead, not by choice, white guy who has been following them and now pulled up alongside them in the middle of a quiet estate in an area known for being racist. The look of relief on his face when I said, "Sorry mate, that's my driveway you're blocking there," was pretty hilarious. Poor kid was scared shitless, but somehow in trying to get rid of me made a series of road choices that convinced him he was about to be murdered. Quite a few years ago, 1992 or 1993, it was after 2 a.m. and I was traveling home. I lived in a very rural part of Collier County, Florida, and it was dark and no other traffic on this 2-lane desolate road. I had gone out and met some friends and had 2 maybe 3 beers at the most. Yes, it was 2 or 3, no more. I wasn't intoxicated in the least. 1. It was on the western edge of the Florida Everglades, nice quiet scenic drive. I was cruising about 55 miles per hour and came upon a maroon Ford Jalopy car doing about 40. It was a 45 miles per hour speed limit and I usually tried to stay within 10 miles over the speed limit to avoid any speeding problems. I went to overtake this hooktomobile and quickly flashed my high beams just to let them know I was coming up and passing on the left. Wasn't many homes around, a few dirt roads and occasional dirt driveways. Didn't think much of it at the time. Passed about 60 and got back into eastbound lane when I saw the car hammer down on gas to catch up to me. Wasn't sure what they were doing. They started flashing their high beam headlights at me and they began closely tailgating my bumper. I must have pissed them off. Wasn't sure what they had in mind. Was a clear legal pass with enough room. They were right up on my bumper honking and flashing their high beams. Started spooking me. They then sped up and came up on my driver's side. I had my window down and it was a nice cool night, nice breeze. I realized their car was full, they had all the windows down as well and there were 4 maybe 5 young, 14 to 18 years old. Hispanic males flashing gang signs at me. Wasn't sure if they had any weapons. Ugh. Front passenger was pointing for me to pull over. I had my weapons permit and retrieved loaded weapon and placed it facing down between my legs. Didn't much care for the 4 or 5 to 1 odds if it came down to it. They got close onto my left side driver's door and then sped up and edged over into my lane, slowing me down and trying to block me off. Trying to force me off-road onto soft right side. I didn't see any close driveways or other vehicles on road. Ugh. Wasn't sure if they were armed or with what. I stayed calm and slowed down enough until they had almost stopped and then I edged my V8 Mustang out around them to the left side, jammed it down into second gear and hammered the gas. Luckily the car was quick and I had quite a lead on them. They were flashing high beams again and trying their best to catch up. See ya. Was doing well over 110 out of there. Hooked my driveway several miles down the road and waited to make sure they didn't see where I had turned off. Really not sure if they would have tried chasing me down if I didn't try a courtesy flash to signal I was passing. Seemed like they were out looked for some action. Lesson learned, I try not to do that anymore if possible. It was very late, and I was driving our middle daughter back to our house, her childhood home, in Ranfontein. We had been visiting her infant son, who was in ICU in the Carltonville Hospital, some 40-odd kilometers away. We had both sat with her baby for most of the day, and were weary and distracted. We had chatted for a while, then we each busied ourselves with our own thoughts. The night was dark, the narrow, winding road seemingly endless. The only lights visible were from one or two farmhouses off in the distance. We started to climb a rather steep hill, and I shifted down to second gear in my 72 Beetle, almost flooring the petrol pedal. At the top of the hill, with no prior signpost warning, the road curved sharply to the right. As I was about to negotiate the turn, a huge dark shape loomed in front of us. It was blacker than the night, then it turned its head toward us, and the car's lights were reflected in its eyes. Maybe I touched the brakes, maybe I didn't, I don't clearly remember. But I did wrench the steering wheel, narrowly missing the hulking beast standing in the middle of the road. My daughter and I concurred, it was a humongous Brahmin-type bull. I'll bet my bottom dollar, the next morning a farmer would be out, looking for his black, prize-winning, stray bull. That was an experience I would never like to repeat. Story 6. You took the words right out of my mouth. I say that because creepiest, scariest, otherworldly, paranormal are the words I would use to describe what I saw in the wee hours of the morning on Highway 59S, about halfway between Victoria and Goliad, Texas. I had gone out bar hopping with a guy friend, in Victoria. We had gotten a late start that night, and so by the time the bars closed, we'd only had a couple of drinks each. So we weren't drunk, and I was driving my old Dodge Ram Charger. We were headed home to Goliad. There's a little spot about halfway between the two towns where a restaurant and gas station sat, near the entrance to some neighborhoods off the highway. There is a bridge at this spot, which was a two-lane road back when this incident took place. So we were just cruising along, laughing and talking, when I passed the stores and approached the bridge. I slowed down just a little bit because I saw something standing on the side of the road, just where the bridge began. My friend was looking toward me, talking, when suddenly this thing literally jumped into the road, then jumped back to the side really quickly. It scared me to death, because I just knew I was going to hit it, and I instinctively pressed the gas pedal, but it was all over before I had time to really hit the brakes. What I saw was built like a human, standing upright on two legs. It had long hair all over its body. I didn't see clothes on it, just hair which looked to be a blondish red color as my headlights illuminated it. The jump from the side of the road and back was a huge jump. I suppose a human could do that, but maybe not. The funny thing is that I said aloud to my friend, "Wow, did you see?" And he was sitting there real quiet and he said, "Yeah, what the hell was that?" And that was it. We never said another word about it, and I never told anyone about it either. It just seemed so surreal, and I realized I would be accused of being drunk or crazy if I told anyone about it. So for years I never thought about the creepy, hairy creature on the side of the road. I'm sad to say that my friend passed away not too long after that night. So I never did discuss what we saw with him. I don't know why neither one of us spoke about it, at the time, or later. I think we were trying to find a way to process such a strange sight, so we quietly mulled things over to ourselves. I'm pretty sure that whatever I saw that night wasn't human. I'm also pretty sure I'll never know what it was. But there is a snapshot of it in my brain, of the way it looked when my headlights first shone on it. Tall, broad-shouldered, 6 long blondish red hair all over its body. The memory will be there for the rest of my life. I went to college 4 hours away from my hometown and would occasionally drive home for weekend visits to see family, high school buddies, etc. My parents are divorced, though still lived in the same county, and at the time my dad was living in a rather small apartment, so I would stay at my mom's ranch house out in the countryside. One such weekend, I'd been out at a late-night techno bowling thing with friends and was driving solo back to my mom's during the wee hours. Being that my mom lives out in the boons, it wasn't uncommon to not see many or any other cars on the road during the drive. So I'm driving along these country roads, minding my business, when I notice I'm being followed by another car. At first I don't think much of it, but then I notice the other car starts swerving behind me. It's up pretty close on my bumper, definitely too close for comfort, and just constantly swerving/weaving back and forth. This goes on for a couple of miles on these deserted, dark country roads. No one else is around. At this point I'm pretty freaked out. The car isn't making any move to pass me despite having ample opportunity to do so, and there's no fucking way I'm stopping/pulling over or going home in case it's a crazy axe murderer or some shit. So I start basically driving in circles, making as many turns as I can, trying to lose this fucking guy. No luck, he is glued to my bumper and still constantly swerving. So I decide to start heading back into the city where I'd been hanging out with friends. It's very early in the morning, but the city is serviced by a state highway, which today is a 3-lane interstate, so I figured getting up onto a higher speed, well-lit road with maybe some other cars around would be helpful. Car still follows me, matching my speed. He follows me for several miles until I, in a fit of panic, and severely not thinking about potential other options, like going to the police department, pull a move of questionable safety and legality and swerve all the way over from the fast lane to an exit ramp at the last minute, surprising the car behind me enough that he missed the exit and presumably had to go up to the next exit a few miles down the road. Having shaken my swerving companion, I booked it back through town on the regular roads, driving probably 30 to 40 over the speed limit in a total panic and rush to get back to my mom's house. I make it back to her house without further incident, though my flesh is crawling at this point and every pair of headlights I see behind me is making me paranoid as shit. To this day I can't drive at night back to my mom's house in the countryside without thinking about it. Even typing this story out now is making my skin crawl. No idea what the swerving car's deal was. Never saw it again, that I know of. I got followed for a long time by an unknown car swerving behind me at like 2 a.m. I was 17 and was new to driving. It was dark out and I was going to pick up a friend, however I had never been to their house before. I brought a second friend for some company on the drive. The first friend's house is in a very rural area. The GPS had us take a road that was more like a path through a field than anything, but it connected with the road we needed to be on. Towards the end of the road there was a house with lots of people outside and a car parked in the road essentially blocking it. We stopped a ways back from the group of people and an older man, clearly drunk, came up to the window and asked what we were doing there on that road. We explained we were just following the GPS and were trying to get somewhere. He said the car should be moved in a minute and there was a stop sign up ahead on the other side of the barn where we could turn onto the road we needed. In the midst of this my friend notices two guys picking up a girl and shoving her kicking and screaming into the back seat of this car. My friend being bold wanted to know what was going on with that and tried to get out. I told her do not get out of the truck. Then the car pulled off to the side and we slowly continued down the road to the stop sign. We sat there for a minute to see if we were to go right or left and then boom, I get rear-ended by an SUV. I slid the cab window open and yelled what the fuck. A girl pokes her head out and goes, "That's what you get for showing up to my boyfriend's house unannounced." Then a man came up to my driver's window screaming and I just gunned it and we drove off. No service from then on. Night time, we stopped at a newer looking house with their lights on. It was an older couple, and we explained what happened. They knew where my friend lived and drove there while we followed. I called the police once we got to my friend's and had service. They came and took my info, then called a few days later to say they went to the road we were on and the house we were near, but no one was. I'm assuming a bunch of drunk idiots, but it was one of the scarier/oddest situations